Hey guys, tonight we're teleporting back over 4,000 years to the sun-baked streets of ancient Memphis, the beating heart of the Egyptian Empire. But before you get too excited, let's have a little reality check. If you're expecting sparkling white teeth and minty fresh breath here, think again. In fact, without the magic of modern dentistry, you might not make it through day one without a throbbing ache or two. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now I want you to imagine this. You're standing on a dusty road, the sun beating down on your linen tunic, and the air smells like a mix of baking clay, river mud, and wait, is that onion? Yep, that sharp, pungent aroma is about to become your new best friend, or worst enemy, as we dive into how the ancient Egyptians used this humble vegetable to protect their pearly, well, maybe not so pearly whites. Oh, and before I forget, hit me up in the comments with where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. I love picturing all of us connected across time and space like this. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your sandals crunch on the gravel as you wander toward the Nile, its murky waters glimmering in the distance. The first thing you notice? Everyone around you is chewing. Old men with weathered faces, children chasing goats, even priests in their snowy linen kilts. They all have this rhythmic jaw movement, like they're secretly gnawing on a secret. You touch your own teeth, suddenly aware of a faint sensitivity. Back in the 21st century, you'd reach for a fluoride toothpaste, but here, the only oral care you see is a vendor squatting by a cart, selling bunches of papyrus scrolls and bowls of pungent sliced onion. Wait, onions? In a dental context? Trust me, your modern brain is gonna need a minute to catch up. See, ancient Egyptians didn't have toothbrushes or floss, but they did have something far more abundant. These bulbous veggies grew like weeds along the Nile's fertile banks, and over centuries they morphed from a kitchen staple into a dental weapon. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's talk about why their teeth needed so much protection in the first place. Historians agree that ancient Egyptians faced a constant battle against tooth decay, thanks to their grain-heavy diet. Bread, that staple of every meal, was often gritty with sand, thanks to stone mill stones, which wore down enamel. Like, add in honey-sweetened pastries and fermented beers, and you've got a recipe for cavities that would make any modern dentist wince. So yeah, you're you're basically walking around with a mouthful of ticking time bombs. You pause by a mud brick wall where two women are chatting, their voices a warm blend of laughter and Nile Arabic. One pulls a small onion from her woven basket, bites into it raw, and lets out a satisfied sigh. Her teeth, you notice, are stained, but surprisingly intact. No gaping holes, no signs of abscesses. Curious, you follow her to a bustling market square, where stalls overflow with garlic, dates and rows of onions, small red ones, bulbous white ones, even skinny green scallions. A toothless vendor notices your stare and holds up her onion, gesturing to his own gums. Bad breath, pain, he grunts, pointing to the onion. Eat, rub, pray to Horus, all better. Here's a fun fact. Onions weren't just for teeth. The Egyptians believed they had magical properties. Their circular layers symbolized eternal life, so they even buried mummies with onions in their eye sockets and abdomens. But today, we're focusing on their dental resume. Turns out, onions are packed with sulfur compounds that kill bacteria. Think of them as nature's mouthwash. Chewing a raw onion for a few minutes can reduce oral bacteria by up to 70%, according to some modern studies. Not bad for a veggie that makes you cry when you chop it. But here's the thing. Did they just chew onions? Or did they have fancier methods? Historians, whether the Egyptians preferred raw onion bites, or if they mashed them into a paste with honey for sweetness, or salt for abrasiveness. Some tomb paintings show servants grinding herbs with stone mortars. Could that be an ancient dental paste? Or was it just dinner? We may never know, but let's assume for your sake they had some system, because that molar of yours is starting to throb. You follow the scent of charred meat to a food stall, where a man is grilling fish over an open fire. Next to his grill, a pile of onion skins, smoking gently. He sees you eyeing them, and grins, tapping his teeth. Smoke keeps bugs away, he says. Which, okay, maybe bugs is his way of saying bacteria. Either way, the logic checks out. Smoke has antimicrobial properties, and onions are already doing heavy lifting. It's a 2-for-1 dental defense strategy. As the sun starts to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city's white limestone temples, you realize something in ancient Memphis isn't a once-a-day routine. It's a way of life. Every meal, every market visit, every religious ritual seems to weave in this pungent bulb. You pluck a small onion from your pouch. Yes, you've already acquired one, when in Egypt, right? And take a tentative bite. The sharpness hits your tongue, making your eyes water. But as you chew, you swear you feel a faint tingle in your gums. A sign maybe that you won't end with a dental emergency after all. Of course, this is just the beginning. Tomorrow, we'll dive deeper into how they grew these dental heroes, why the Nile's floods made onions so darn effective, and maybe even meet a few ancient dentists who thought prayer was just as important as paste. But for now, let's let the idea of ancient onion breath linger gently in the air. After all, it's better than the alternative of ancient tooth pain, right? So as you drift off, imagine the hum of the Nile, the rustle of palm fronds, and the faint sharp scent of onions carried on the desert wind. Sleep easy, knowing that even thousands of years ago, humans were figuring out ways to keep their smiles intact. One pungent bite at a time. The first rays of sunlight are barely kissing the tops of the date palms when you hear the rhythmic thud of a wooden plow hitting soil, rubbing the sleep from your eyes. Sleep that was surprisingly restful, thanks to the faint onion breath that seemed to ward off whatever ancient Memphis mosquitoes might have had in mind. You follow the sound to the edge of the city, where the fertile black earth of the Nile Delta begins. A stocky man, with sun-darkened arms, waves you over, gesturing to a pair of reed sandals by his feet. "Come, stranger," he says, grinning with a gap where a canine tooth should be. "You smell like onion already. Good. You'll fit in." His name is Ptahhotep, and he's a farmer who's agreed to show you where the magic happens. The onion fields that feed both bellies and dental routines in ancient Egypt. The Nile's annual floods, you remember from that one college history class, turned this region into a breadbasket, or in this case, an onion basket. When the river receded each year, it left behind a sticky, nutrient-rich silt called sikit, which was like miracle grow for ancient crops. Onions, with their shallow roots and love for moisture, thrived here, so much so that they became one of the few crops grown year-round. Ptahhotep dips his fingers into the soil, which squelches like wet clay. See? Soft, full of fish bones and donkey dung. Onions love it better than your, what was it? Chemical fertilizers. He chuckles, clearly skeptical of your vague modern explanations, as you walk between neat rows of green onion shoots, each about as tall as your forearm. Ptahhotep explains that there are 3 main types here. The small, fiery red onions, good for quick chewing after meals. The large white ones, best for mashing into pastes. And the delicate green onions, used in rituals, he says, because their long stems resemble the god Osiris's green crown of rebirth. Here's a fun twist. Onions weren't just farmed for their bulbs. The Egyptians also valued the leaves. They'd chew on the green shoots for a milder onion hit, or weave them into bracelets believed to ward off evil spirits. Bad spirits hate the smell, Ptahhotep says, winking, almost as much as bad tea. You down to examine a cluster of onions, noticing that each plant is spaced exactly a hand's width apart. No crowding, Ptahhotep says, tapping the ground. They need room to breathe, Just like us, he pulls out a wooden dibber, a pointed stick used to make planting holes, and demonstrates, dropping a tiny onion bulb into each hole with the care of someone handling precious gems. We plant them in late autumn, when the Nile is low, he says. By spring, they're ready to pop, but the best ones, the ones we save for the temple. His voice trails off, and he glances toward the distant silhouette of the Memphis temple complex, its limestone walls gleaming in the rising sun. Now here's where things get tricky. Did ancient Egyptians specifically cultivate onions for dental use? Or was it just a happy coincidence that their staple veggie had oral benefits? Some historians argue that the meticulous way they stored onions, hanging them in cool, dry granaries away from other crops, suggests they knew about their antimicrobial powers. Others say it was just standard food preservation. Ptahhotep, for his part, shrugs when you ask. Onions heal everything, he says simply. Mouth, belly, even a broken heart. Why not? As the morning heats up, Ptahhotep takes a break to drink from a clay jug filled with cool Nile water. Offering you a sip, you decline politely, remembering how modern docs warn about ancient river water, and instead watch as he plucks a young green onion from the ground, brushes off the silt, and starts chewing on the white bulb. His jaw works methodically, like this is as routine as brushing teeth in your time. Keeps the weevils away, he says, though you're not sure if he means the bugs in the field, or the bacteria in his mouth. Either way, his gums look healthy, pink against the yellowed enamel of his teeth. You wander to the edge of the field, where a shallow canal feeds water to the onions. The Egyptians' irrigation system is simple but genius. They use ox-drawn shadufs to lift water from the Nile into these canals, creating a network that ensures every onion gets just the right amount of moisture. No droughts, no floods, just perfect, consistent growth. It's a far cry from the plastic sprinklers in your modern garden, but somehow it feels more in tune with the land. Back at the farmstead, Ptahhotep's wife, Nefeti, is sorting onions into woven baskets. The largest ones, she explains, will go to the market. The misshapen ones, which Ptahhotep affectionately calls the god's rejects, will be used for household remedies. She holds up a particularly gnarly onion, its layers cracked and uneven. For toothache, she says, pulling out a stone mortar and pestle, crush with honey, rub on gum, hurt, stops. Mostly, she grins, revealing a smile that's missing a few teeth, but surprisingly free of decay. As the sun climbs higher, Ptahhotep invites you to sit in the shade of a sycamore tree, where his family is sharing a simple lunch: flat bread, dates, and of course sliced raw onions. You take a bite of the bread, wincing at the gritty texture, thanks stone millstones, and then follow their lead, chewing on a piece of onion to counteract the sand's abrasiveness. The sharp flavor cuts through the bland bread, and you swear your teeth feel cleaner already, though that might just be placebo, or the power of ancient agriculture. Before you leave, Ptahhotep presses a small bundle of red onions into your hands. For your teeth, he says, and for the gods, offer one at the temple tomorrow. Sekhmet likes the sharp ones. Wait, Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of war and healing. You'd heard she was worshipped here, but you didn't realize onions played a role in her rituals. Turns out, onions were often offered to gods like Sekhmet and Hathor, believed to please them with their pungent life force. Priests would burn onion incense during ceremonies, thinking the smoke carried prayers to the heavens. Whether the gods cared about dental hygiene or just liked the smell, no one can say, but it's clear onions were more than food here. They were a bridge between the mortal and the divine. As you walk back toward Memphis, the bundle of onions heavy in your linen bag, you realize something. In ancient Egypt, isn't just about fighting decay. It's about harmony with the land. The Nile gives the onions life. The onions give protection to the teeth, and the teeth let the people work the land again. It's a cycle as eternal as the river's floods and the sun's daily journey across the sky. Tomorrow, we'll dive into that cycle's next link, the bustling market, where onions become currency, both for food and for dental care. You'll meet vendors who trade onion varieties, like modern stockbrokers, trade stocks, and maybe even witness a tooth tax paid in bulbs. But for now, let the image of Ptahhotep's onion field linger. Rows of green stretching to the horizon, Nile water glistening on the leaves, and the earthy scent of fresh soil mixing with that sharp, comforting onion aroma. Sleep well, and dream of ancient hands planting bulbs in fertile silt, knowing that every seed they sowed was a tiny act of defiance against time, decay, and the harshness of a world without dental floss. The morning sun turns the Memphis market into a riot of color. Scarlet hibiscus garlands hang next to golden sheaves of wheat. Pottery glimmers in shades of cobalt and terracotta, and everywhere, onions strung in braids, piled in pyramids, even carved into rough amulets, shaped like teeth. You tighten your grip on Ptahhotep's gift bundle, suddenly aware that these humble bulbs aren't just vegetables here, they're currency. A man with a reed scale balanced on his shoulder brushes past you, yelling 2 white bulbs for a jar of honey, 3 red ones for a linen wrap. You pause at a stall where onions are sorted into clay bowls, labeled with hieroglyphs. A bowl with flames holds tiny papery skinned red onions. A bowl with dripping pottery jar has plump white ones, and a bowl with painted feathers contains delicate green onions with roots still attached. The vendor, a woman with henna-stained hands, notices your confusion and gestures to the symbols. Fire onions for pain, she says, tapping the red bowl. Water onions for cleaning, feather onions for the gods, and for rich people's teeth. Welcome to the world of barter economics, ancient Egyptian style. While they had gold and silver for large transactions, everyday goods including dental care relied on commodity money. Onions, thanks to their durability, antimicrobial properties, and universal demand, were as good as cash. A 19th dynasty papyrus even mentions a dentist being paid in 100 white onions and 50 jars of beer for treating a noble's abscess, proof that oral health was valuable enough to warrant a small fortune in bulbs. You wander deeper into the market, where a makeshift dental clinic has set up shop under a tattered linen awning. A man with a copper forceps hanging from his belt, presumably the dentist, sits on a stool, examining a patient's mouth by tilting her chin toward the sun. 3 red onions and a garlic clove, he barks, after prodding her gums. I'll pack the whole with onion pulp, pray to Thoth it takes. The patient nods, digging into her pouch to produce the required bulbs. So even here, in the realm of professional dental care, onions are the payment plan. Here's a twist. Not all onions were created equal in the market. The fire onions, as the vendor called them, were prized for their high sulfur content, making them ideal for killing bacteria in deep cavities. Wealthy clients, though, preferred the water onions, milder, juicier, and perfect for creating a smooth paste that wouldn't irritate sensitive gums. And those feather onions, they were reserved for priests and nobles, not just for their symbolic value, but because their tender layers were thought to soften the gods' hearts during dental prayers. You spot a grizzled fisherman haggling with a toothpaste vendor. Yes, toothpaste ancient style. On a flat stone slab, the vendor mixes ground eggshells for abrasiveness, honey for stickiness, and a mashed white onion for antibacterial oomph. 2 bulbs for a palmful, he says. The fisherman argues, your paste smells like the Nile's bad breath. 1 bulb, and I'll throw in a dried fish. They settle on 1.5 onions, a compromise sealed with a brisk handshake. Did this onion-based currency have a standardized value, or was it all haggling? Historians disagree. Some point to the papyrus records as evidence of fixed rates, while others argue that onion prices fluctuated like modern stock prices, depending on the harvest. Was a molar extraction worth 10 onions in a good year, or 20 during a flood? We may never know, but one thing's clear: if you had a toothache here, you'd better hope your garden was thriving. At another stall, A herbalist is selling small linen bags filled with charred onion skins. For gum boils, she says, handing you a sample. Steep in wine, rinse twice a day. The gods gave us onions for a reason. Even their waste heals. You sniff the bag. It smells like a campfire crossed with a pantry raid, but there's a faint medicinal undertone. Modern science would later confirm that burnt onion skins contain antioxidants. But in 200 and 500 BCE, it's just another trick in the ancient dental toolkit. A commotion draws your attention to a corner where a young boy is offering a single green onion to a sweet seller in exchange for a honeyed date. The seller pretends to grumble, but takes the bulb, knowing full well that the onion will keep longer than the date and can be traded again later. It's a microcosm of the market's ecosystem. Every onion is a link in a chain of care, passing from farmer to vendor to dentist to patient. Each transaction a step in the cycle of oral health. You pause at a stall run by an elderly woman who's painting tiny onion motifs on wooden toothsticks. Smooth twigs used for scraping plaque. Red onion for strength, she says, painting a scarlet spiral. White onion for purity. For a single green onion, the feather variety you notice, she'll custom carve your name in hieroglyphs along the handle. It's a luxury item, reserved for those who can afford both dental hygiene and a bit of vanity. As the sun climbs higher, the market heat becomes oppressive, but the energy doesn't wane. You watch a group of laborers gather around a food cart, each buying a cheap bread roll stuffed with raw onion slices, both a meal and a post-lunch dental treatment. Their laughter is loud, their teeth surprisingly intact, and you realize that here, tooth care isn't a separate routine. It's woven into the act of eating, trading, even praying. Before you leave, you visit the dentist's awning again. Now empty, except for the dentist himself, cleaning his copper tools with an onion peel. "See that man?" he says, nodding to a nobleman across the market, who's flanked by servants carrying onion-filled baskets. "He pays me in gold, but I convert it to onions. Gold can't heal gums. Onions can." It's a philosophy that sums up ancient Egypt's relationship with this vegetable, practical, spiritual, and utterly intertwined with survival. Tomorrow we'll step into that dentist's clinic for a front row seat to an ancient root canal, minus the anesthesia, but plus plenty of onion-based pain relief. You'll meet the men and women who made dental care their life's work, blending magic and medicine in a way that'll make your modern dentist's drill seem positively gentle. But for now, let the market sounds fade into the background. The clatter of pottery, the murmur of haggling, and the faint, persistent scent of onions that hangs in the air like a protective fog. Drift off with the image of those braided onion strings swaying in the breeze, each bulb a tiny guardian of smiles across time. Sleep well, and dream of a world where pocket change is as pungent as it is practical. Because in ancient Memphis, every onion was a promise that your teeth might just outlast the desert sands. Your molar is throbbing in time with the midday sun, a sharp pulse behind your eye that even the constant onion chewing hasn't dulled. You'd been ignoring it, hoping Pahotep's fire onion remedy would work. But now every bite of bread feels like gnawing on gravel. So when you spot the dentist's sign, a painted wooden tooth hanging above a mud brick doorway, you hesitate only a moment before ducking inside, onions clutched in one hand, courage in the other. The clinic is cooler than the market, shaded by a reed mat covering the single window. The first thing you notice is the smell, a heady mix of crushed onions, bitter myrrh, and something metallic, probably the copper tools laid out on a stone table. On the walls, faded murals depict gods healing teeth. Thoth, ibis-headed and wise, holds a scroll labeled The Secret of the Gum. Sekhmet, lioness, fierce, crushes a snake, symbol of decay you assume under her paw, while clutching an onion. A man in a crisp linen kilt looks up from grinding something in a mortar. His name is Imhotep, he says, gesturing to a low stool. "Don't worry, he adds, seeing your nervous glance at the rusty-looking forceps. I only use those for loose teeth. Yours looks fixable. He leans closer, inspecting your mouth, with a wooden tongue depressor carved with protective symbols. Ah, there, see the black spot? The Subo, the rote demons, have set up camp, but will evict them. Sit. Contrary to the modern myth that ancient dentistry was all guesswork, Egyptians had specialized dentists, called sachouars, or those who treat the mouth, as early as 2600 BC. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts, lists 48 dental cases, including abscesses and fractures, with treatments ranging from honey onion poultices to magical incantations. Imhotep here is part of a proud tradition. He even has a leather satchel stamped with the symbol of a tooth, marking him as a professional. He turns to his mortar, where a paste of mashed white onion, honey, and a pinch of ground eggshell. You recognize the gritty texture from the market, glistens in the dim light. First, we soothe the demons, he says, dipping a linen strip into the paste. The onion kills their power, the honey calms their anger, the eggshell, to remind them we're stronger. As he presses the poultice against your aching gum, you wince at the sharp, sweet burn, part antiseptic sting, part honeyed stickiness. It's better than the alternative of him yanking the tooth, you suppose. Here's a detail that'll make your dentist raise an eyebrow. Imhotep doesn't just rely on paste. He also chants a spell, low and rhythmic, as he works. O Sekhmet, lioness of healing, tear out the rot. O Teth, scribe of wisdom, bind the pain, he murmurs, tapping your forehead with an onion bulb as if blessing it. Historians have found similar incantations on tomb walls, where dentists believed that gods like Horus, whose eye symbol represented healing, would guide their hands. Was it placebo, or did they genuinely think the gods had dental degrees? As the paste seeps into your gum, Imhotep shows you his toolkit. More than just forceps. There's a copper probe for poking cavities, a wooden mallet for adjusting misaligned teeth, yikes, and a small jar of powdered alum, a natural astringent, mixed with, you guessed it, dried onion flakes, for bleeding gums, he says. Even the gods can't stop a bleed without a little help. Did these spells actually do anything? Or were they just a way to calm the patient? Scholars debate. Some argue that the ritual aspect reduced anxiety, which in turn boosted the body's healing response. Others say it was pure superstition, noting that many dental gods were also associated with war or agriculture, making their connection to oral health more symbolic than practical. Imhotep, though, swears by it. Why do you think the pharaohs have such strong teeth? He asks. It's not just the onion paste, it's the god's favor. You glance at a nearby shelf, where small linen bags hang, each labeled with a patient's name and a drawing of a tooth. Inside, Imhotep explains, are preservation onions, dried bulbs, stuffed into extracted tooth sockets to prevent infection. Modern science would approve dehydration. Concentrates the onion's antimicrobial compounds, acting as a natural bandage. It's a far cry from your dentist's sterile gauze, but in a world without antibiotics, it's genius. Another patient enters, a young scribe with ink-stained fingers, clutching a pouch of red onions. His problem, a cracked molar from gnawing on hard bread. Imhotep texts, shaking his head. You scribes are all the same, too busy writing about gods to take care of your own teeth. He mixes a stronger paste for the scribe, adding a drop of castor oil for numbing, he says, and more onion juice. Wear this overnight, he instructs, pressing the poultice into the crack, and stop using your teeth as chisels. As the scribe leaves, Imhotep rinses his tools in a bowl of vinegar, another antimicrobial agent. You realize, and sighs, business is good, he says, but I wish people would chew more raw onions before the rot sets in. The farmers get it. They're out in the fields, crunching on greens every hour. It's the nobles who think onions are beneath them, until their gums start bleeding. He pauses, then adds, "Speaking of nobles, I treated the royal dentist's assistant last week. He had a special paste infused with frankincense and gold dust. Ridiculous. Onion works just as well, minus the fancy smell." You laugh, despite the ache in your jaw. Even in ancient Egypt, there's room for professional rivalry. By the time Imhotep pronounces your treatment done, the demons have fled, but chew a red onion twice a day to keep them away. The sun is low, casting long shadows through the reed mat. He refuses your onions as payment. You're a guest, and guests of Sekhmet pay with prayers, not bulbs, but lets you take a small jar of his paste for the road. As you step back into the market's fading light, your gum still tingles, but the pain is already duller. You pass a group of children playing a game where they pretend to be dentists, using twigs as probes and onion skins as magic poultices. It's a reminder that here, dental care isn't just a profession, it's a shared language, spoken in onions and prayers, passed down from healer to child to healer again. Tomorrow we'll follow that language into the homes of ordinary Egyptians, where mothers and grandmothers guard family thorough tooth care recipe like state secrets. You'll learn how to turn a kitchen into a dental lab, why honey was as important as onions, and whether that special noble paste Imhotep mentioned was just hype or had a kernel of ancient wisdom. But for now, let the coolness of the clinic linger, along with the faint hum of Imhotep's final prayer still in your ears. Drift off imagining those ancient dentists, hunched over their mortars, blending science and spirit with every grind of onion. Sleep easy, knowing that even in the darkest corners of time, someone was trying to ease the pain, one pungent, sacred paste at a time. The sun is dipping toward the Nile like a tired swimmer when you follow Neferti, Tahotep's wife, back to their mud brick home. Smoke curls from a rooftop chimney, carrying the scent of roasted onions and warm bread, a smell that's become both comforting and slightly overwhelming in your few days here. Neferti pushes aside a reed door, gesturing you inside with a grin. "Time to learn the real magic," she says. The kind grandmothers whisper over mortars at midnight. The home is cool and dim, lit by a single oil lamp shaped like a lotus. On a low wooden table you spot familiar tools: a granite mortar, cracked but well loved, a copper pestle etched with tiny tooth symbols, and a clay jar of honey, sealed with beeswax. Neferti's daughter, a girl of about 8, named Merit, is already sitting cross-legged on a rush mat, sorting through a basket of onions, discarding the bruised ones, setting aside the plump white bulbs, and nibbling on a green shoot like it's a candy stick. Most ancient Egyptians didn't visit dentists unless they were in agony. Daily, tooth care relied on homemade remedies passed down through generations. Women like Neferti were the first line of defense against tooth decay, blending kitchen staples with herbal wisdom. A 12th dynasty papyrus found in Lahore lists a recipe for strong gums that includes onion juice, honey, and powdered ox hoof, though Neferti swears ox hoof is for fancy nobles who think cow parts make them royal. Neferti starts by selecting a large white onion, its skin as smooth as parchment. "First you curse the rot," she says, winking. Not literally, but almost. She slices the onion in half, revealing its concentric rings, and hands you one half. "Smell that. That's the god's breath. It burns the bad spirits right out." You inhale, eyes watering. Yes, that sharp, sulfurous tang does feel like it could kill something, even if it's just your ability to taste dessert later. She drops the onion into the mortar and begins grinding with the pestle, the sound rhythmic and meditative. Merit adds a dollop of honey from the jar, its golden sweetness cutting the onion's bite. Honey keeps the paste sticky, Neferti explains, so it clings to your teeth like a loyal servant. And look. She pinches a bit of reddish-brown resin from another jar. Myrrh, from the land of Punt, far across the sea. Expensive, but worth it. It numbs the pain and makes the gods smile. Myrrh wasn't just a luxury, it had a dual role in ancient dental care. Its antimicrobial properties complemented the onions, but it also added a fragrant twist to mask the onion's pungency, important for those who had to talk to nobles or gods without smelling like a kitchen. Wealthy families might add frankincense too, but Neferti scoffs at that. Stinks like a temple fire. Myrrh's better. Plus it comes in little tears like the goddess Isis crying for Osiris, perfect for healing. As the paste takes shape, thick, sticky, and dotted with tiny onion flecks, Neferti pauses. Now here's the secret. You must grind clockwise for the sun's blessing, counterclockwise for the moon's mercy. She demonstrates, the pestle moving in a slow, deliberate circle. My mother said, if you mix wrong, the paste turns bitter. I think she just wanted me to pay attention. How precise were these recipes? Historians argue over whether there were standardized measurements, or if it was all a handful of this, a splash of that. Neferti, for example, uses no measuring tools, just her eyes and hands, judging consistency by how the paste clings to the pestle. Too runny, and it drips down your throat, she says. Too thick, and it's like chewing gravel. You learn by mistake, and by spitting a lot. Merit pipes up, holding up a small onion she's been gnawing on. Mama says I have to chew raw onions every morning, or Thoth will steal my words, she says, lisping around a half-eaten bulb. Neferti nods. Words need strong teeth to speak them, and strong teeth need onions to stay. It's a rhyme passed down, she explains, from her grandmother, who learned it from her grandmother, all the way back to when the pyramids were just sketches in the sand. You ask about storage, how long the paste lasts. Neferti points to a shelf where small linen packets hang, each containing dried onion flakes and powdered myrrh, for travel or bad harvests. She says, just add honey and water, and you've got paste in moments. Even the desert can't kill dried onion. Modern science would agree. Dehydrated onions retain their antibacterial properties for months, making them the ancient equivalent of a dental first aid kit. As a test, Neferti dips a wooden toothstick into the paste and hands it to you. Scrub gently, like you're brushing a baby crocodile's teeth, she says, grinning. The stick is rough, but effective. The paste gritty yet soothing. The myrrh lending a faint, earthy sweetness that cuts the onion's bite. You scrub for a minute, then rinse with water from a jar. Surprised to find your gums feeling fresher, your teeth smoother, as if the paste has polished away a layer of ancient grime. Merit demonstrates her own routine. After dinner, a simple meal of fish, bread, and more onions. She chews a green onion shoot for a full 5 minutes, moving it from cheek to cheek, like a natural floss. Gets the bread bits out, she says, showing off a gap where a baby tooth recently fell out, and makes my breath smell like the Nile in spring. Well, maybe not spring, but definitely like a vegetable garden with attitude. Before you leave, Neferti presses a small linen packet into your hand. Dried onion, myrrh, and a scrap of papyrus, with her recipe drawn in simple hieroglyphs. A tooth, an onion, a honey jar, and a wavy line for pray once, stir twice. For when you go back to your world, she says, where onions are just food, not magic. As you walk home under a sky pricked with stars, the packet heavy in your pouch, you realize something. These home remedies weren't just about hygiene, they were about connection. Every grind of the mortar, every whispered rhyme, every shared tip between mother and daughter, wove a thread of care that tied generations together. In a world without TikTok tutorials or dental blogs, Neferti's kitchen was a classroom, a pharmacy, and a sanctuary, all in one. Tomorrow we'll step into the realm of the nobles, where tooth care becomes a luxury sport. Think gold tools, linen-wrapped onion poultices, and maybe even a spa day fit for a pharaoh. You'll see how the wealthy turned a humble bulb into a status symbol, and whether their fancy methods were any better than Neferti's simple paste. But for now, let the memory of her kitchen linger. The warm glow of the lamp, the rhythmic grind of the pestle, and the laughter that rose every time someone accidentally bit into a too hot red onion, drift off to the imaginary scent of fresh mortar and paste, mixed with the faint reassuring hum of a mother teaching her daughter how to keep their smiles strong, sleep well, and dream of a world where every home had a healer in the form of a woman with a mortar, a jar of honey, and a lifetime of wisdom, all wrapped up in the pungent, protective embrace of an onion. The air smells like a spice market, collided with a vegetable patch. Cinnamon, myrrh and onions, sharp and celebratory. As you step into the bustling streets of Memphis, drums thump in the distance, their rhythm matching the excited chatter of crowds wearing onion-shaped amulets around their necks. Today is the festival of Sekhmet, the lioness goddess who both terrifies and heals. And if the rumors are true, this isn't just a religious holiday. It's a tooth care carnival. A woman in a cobalt blue dress presses a garland into your hands. Small red onions, strung on linen thread, interspersed with green onion shoots that wave like tiny flags. For your teeth and the goddess, she says, grinning. Wear it proud. Sekhmet loves the bold ones. You drape it over your neck, the onions brushing your collarbone like pungent jewelry. Around you, children chase each other, waving onion stalks like swords, while elders chew on raw bulbs in time with the drumbeat, as if practicing a sacred oral hygiene dance. The festival of Sekhmet was no small affair. Sekhmet, often depicted with a sun disk on her head and a fierce scowl, was believed to control plagues and healing, including dental pain. Egyptians thought her fiery nature could burn away decay, so during her festival they flooded the temples with onion offerings, believing the pungent scent would please her and ward off tooth demons. The rituals were so important that even pharaohs participated, wearing onion crowns while praying for strong teeth to speak their royal decrees. You follow the crowd to the temple of Sekhmet, its columns carved with images of the goddess clutching both a sword and an onion, symbolizing her dual role as destroyer and healer. Priests in leopard skin robes stand at the entrance, handing out bowls of onion-infused beer. Yes, beer for spiritual rinsing. Swish 3 times, pray 3 times, one priest instructs, pouring you a sip. It's bitter, oniony and slightly carbonated from fermentation, like an ancient mouthwash cocktail. Here's a detail that'll make your modern dentist side-eye. The highlight of the festival is the onion purification ritual. A high priest, wearing a mask shaped like Sekhmet's lion head, parades through the temple with a golden censer filled with burning onion skins. The smoke is said cleanse the air of decay, but it also has a practical side. As we mentioned earlier, burnt onion has antimicrobial properties, so the whole temple is basically getting a natural disinfectant fogging. Plus, the sight of a lion-masked priest waving smoking onions. Iconic. You slip inside the temple, where the air is thick with incense and the murmur of prayers. At the altar, a row of stone bowls holds offerings, polished onions, shiny as gemstones, jars of onion paste, sealed with gold leaf, and even a mummified onion, wrapped in linen, complete with a tiny tooth amulet, dedicated to the goddess. A worshipper in front of you places a single red onion at the altar, whispering, "For my daughter's loose tooth, may it fall gently, and her new one grow straight." Were these rituals purely symbolic, or did they have a community health purpose? Some historians argue that the mass onion chewing during festivals helped reduce oral bacteria across the city, a primitive form of public health campaign. Others say it was all about appeasing the gods, with no real focus on hygiene. The truth, probably a bit of both. After all, when you're surrounded by thousands of people munching onions, you're not just praying for dental health, you're creating a bacterial-killing cloud around the entire temple. Near the altar, a group of women are teaching each other to braid onion leaves into gum protection bracelets. Cross the green shoots 3 times for each molar, one instructs, looping the leaves into intricate patterns. It's part craft, part dental workshop. Every bracelet is both a fashion statement and a reminder to chew onions daily. A young girl shows off her creation, proudly declaring it'll keep Sekhmet's lions away from her gums. The festival reaches a crescendo when the high priest emerges with a giant onion, easily the size of a watermelon, carved to resemble Sekhmet's head. The crowd gasps as he anoints it with honey and myrrh, then slices it open, revealing layers dyed red and white, symbolizing blood and purity. He explains, each worshipper is given a tiny piece to chew, accompanied by a blessing. May your teeth be as strong as the goddess's claws, as clean as her lion's mane. You take your piece, chewing thoughtfully, as the drumbeat slows to a meditative pulse. The onion is milder than the usual ones, almost sweet, likely a special cultivar grown for the festival. Around you, people close their eyes, savoring the moment, or maybe just the lack of tooth pain for a few blessed minutes. As the sun sets, the temple courtyard fills with lanterns shaped like onions, their flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. A group of musicians plays a lullaby of sorts, singing about onions that guard the mouth, Sekhmet, who guards the soul. And you realize this festival isn't just about one day of carnival. It's a yearly reminder that tooth care is a sacred act, a partnership between humans, nature and the divine. Before you leave, a priestess hands you a small scroll painted with Sekhmet's image and a row of tiny onions. Keep it under your pillow, she says, to ward off nightmares and toothaches. You tuck it into your pouch, smiling at the dual purpose. In ancient Egypt, even the gods didn't waste time on single tasking. Tomorrow, we'll trade the festival's chaos for the quiet luxury of a noble's estate, where tooth care becomes a pampered ritual involving gold tools and linen-wrapped onion poultices. You'll meet nobles who think chewing raw onions is beneath them, until they realize their fancy creams still can't beat nature's pungent power. But for now, let the festival's warmth linger. The glow of onion lanterns, the hum of ancient prayers, and the faint spicy scent of 1,000 onions celebrating both life and teeth. Drift off imagining yourself sitting among the crowd, garland around your neck, feeling the collective hope of a city that believes a vegetable can bridge the gap between the mortal and the divine. Sleep well, and dream of a world where every festival is a reminder that even the smallest bulb can hold the power to protect, heal and connect, one pungent joyous bite at a time. The winding path to the nobleman's estate is lined with sycamore trees, draped in linen ribbons, white for purity. You assume, though they also do a fine job of shading the walk from the merciless sun. You're clutching an invitation, a papyrus scroll sealed with onion-shaped wax, naturally, from a noblewoman named Nefertari, who'd spotted your festival garland and declared you a fellow appreciator of fine dental care. Translation: she's curious about your commoner's knowledge, but too polite to say it. The estate gates swing open to reveal a courtyard, where servants hurry about with silver trays of dates. And wait, is that a golden mortar and pestle? Nefertari herself glides toward you, her linen gown so sheer it's practically a cloud. Her teeth remarkably white, you note, framed by a smile that's equal parts warm and wary. Do forgive the aroma, she says, waving a hand at the air which smells faintly of roses. And underneath, that familiar onion tang. My dentist insists on authenticity, even for nobles. Nobles in ancient Egypt didn't just use onions. They turned tooth care into a status symbol. While peasants chewed raw bulbs, the elite had elaborately ritualized routines, often supervised by personal dentists, who lived in the estate. A 14th dynasty tomb painting shows a nobleman reclining on a couch, while a servant uses a gold-tipped stick to apply onion paste to his gums. Proof that even oral hygiene was a way to flaunt wealth. Nefertari's gold mortar, you realize, is less a tool and more a trophy. She leads you to a shaded pavilion, where a young servant named Senet waits, kneeling beside a marble basin filled with rose water. On a silver tray rest 3 types of onion preparations: a smooth white paste, infused with honey and ground ostrich eggshell, Senet explains, a jar of onion juice, mixed with frankincense, for aromatic rinsing, and a bundle of linen strips, soaked in onion-infused olive oil, for gentle polishing. Nefertari says, as if describing a spa treatment. Here's a detail that'll make your credit card wince. Nobles often imported luxury onions from Nubia, small sweet bulbs that grew in the shadow of desert cliffs. These were reserved for dental use only, because chewing a common Nile onion would have been as gauche as wearing last season's linen. Nefertari's paste, you suspect, contains at least one of these rare bulbs. It smells faintly of citrus, a far cry from the eye-watering pungency of Ptahhotep's farm variety. Senet begins the ritual by dipping a linen strip into the onion oil, then gently rubbing it along Nefertari's teeth. Upward strokes, she explains, to mimic the Nile's current, which carries away impurities. Nefertari closes her eyes, sighing contentedly, while you try not to snicker at the absurdity of it all. Back in the market, people are literally gnawing raw onions. And here, it's a full-on dental spa day, complete with scented oils and servant fanfare. Did these fancy methods work better than the peasants' simple chewing? Historians argue. On one hand, the linen strips probably did a better job of removing plaque than a rough toothstick. On the other, the dilution of onion juice, with oils and perfumes, might have reduced its antibacterial potency. Nefertari, of course, swears by it. My dentist says the gods favor those who take care with grace. She says, not those who crunch like donkeys at a trough. As Senet moves to the paste, she adds a pinch of ground malachite, a blue-green mineral, believed to ward off evil spirits, to the mortar, grinding it with the pestle in a precise, clockwise motion. 3 grinds for each molar, she murmurs, as the priests instruct. You're tempted to mention that Ptahhotep's wife uses a cracked granite mortar, and no malachite. But hold your tongue. Nobles, it seems, need their rituals as much as their onions. Nefertari opens her mouth for the paste, and you catch a glimpse of her gums, pink and healthy despite the lack of raw onion chewing. Maybe there's something to this luxury routine, or maybe her privileged diet, soft bread, peeled fruits, no gritty sand, gives her an unfair advantage. Either way, her dentist, who arrives just then, draped in a leopard skin stole, looks like he takes his job very seriously. Madame's incisors show slight staining from the date wine, he says, clucking his tongue. We must increase the myrrh in the paste and reduce the honey. Sugar is the enemy of Sekhmet's blessing. Nefertari nods solemnly, as if he's diagnosed a terminal illness, not a minor dental issue. You bite back a smile even in 1400 BCE. Dentists love to scold about sugar. The routine continues with a rinse of onion frankincense wine, sipped from a gold cup, naturally, followed by Senet placing a tiny linen-wrapped onion pouch between Nefertari's cheek and gum, to freshen the breath and honor the goddess. It's a far cry from the market vendor's chew and pray, but the core idea is the same. Onions as both medicine and ritual. As a finale, the dentist produces a small ivory box containing what he calls divine dust, powdered onions mixed with gold flakes. For the gum line, he says, dusting it gently along Nefertari's gums. Gold strengthens the flesh. Onions strengthen the spirit. Together they are invincible. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. Gold has 0 dental benefits. But hey, when you're a noble, even your tooth powder needs bling. After the ritual, Nefertari offers you a taste of her dental tea, boiled onion water, infused with mint and honey. It's surprisingly pleasant, the mint masking the onion's bite, the warmth soothing your still sensitive molar. We nobles have to balance efficacy with elegance, she says, swirling her cup. Raw onions are for the fields. Here we refine their power. You leave the estate as the sun begins to set, the memory of gold tools and scented pastes fading into the familiar scent of Nile mud. Part of you envies the luxury, but most of you prefers Ptahhotep's honest crunch of a raw onion. No frills, No fuss, just a vegetable doing what it does best. Tomorrow, we'll join the peasants in the fields, where a day of back-breaking labor ends with a surprisingly effective huya hack that requires nothing but a fresh onion and a tired smile. You'll learn why chewing raw onions after sunrise to sunset work might just be the oldest form of dental self-care, and whether the noble's fancy methods can ever beat the simplicity of nature's design. But for now, let the image of Nefertari's golden mortar fade, replaced by the earthy, unpretentious aroma of a farmer's onion. Humble, hard-working, and forever show Huda the smiles of those who till the land. Drift off, imagining the soft glow of oil lamps in noble pavilions, side by side with the flicker of campfires in peasant huts, both worlds united by a single bulb that bridges luxury and necessity. Sleep well, and dream of a world where, whether you're a noble or a farmer, an onion in hand is a promise that your teeth will stand strong, no matter how you choose to chew it. The sun beats down on your back, like a vengeful god, as you hoe alongside Ptahhotep in the onion fields, sweat dripping into the silt, and turning it to mud between your toes. Your linen tunic is plastered to your skin, your shoulders ache, and every time you bite into the midday bread, coarse gritty, a relic of stone millstones, you feel a new twinge in your molars. Ptahhotep, though, works without complaint, pausing only to wipe his brow and chew on a green onion shoot he's plucked from the row beside him. Nobles think we're crazy for eating raw onions in the heat, he says, grinning through a mouthful of crunchy green. They say it makes us smell like the Nile's underbelly. But tell me, when was the last time you saw a farmer with a rotten tooth? He taps his incisors, surprisingly intact despite decades of grinding sand-laden bread. We don't have gold mortars or fancy rinses. We have this. He holds up a small red onion, still damp from the morning's irrigation. Nature's dentist. Right in the field, peasants, like Ptahhotep, relied on raw onions as both snack and dental care, precisely because they didn't have luxury. Their diet, heavy on unrefined grains, hard vegetables and grit, created constant enamel erosion, making daily antibacterial action non-negotiable. A 19th dynasty ostrakon, a shard of pottery used as a notebook, even lists chew onion at sunrise and sunset as the first line of a farmer's daily routine, right after pray to Hapi for Nile floods. As the afternoon wears on, you notice a pattern. Every time a laborer stops to drink from the canal, they also grab a small onion, red for the men, green for the women. Ptahhotep explains, because red burns more, and we men have tougher gums. You watch a young woman, her arms corded with muscle from hauling water, bite into a green onion with a satisfied sigh, her jaw working methodically as she eyes the next row of crops. It's not a ritual, it's a reflex, as natural as wiping sweat or adjusting a sandal. Here's a trick even Nefertari's nobles didn't know. Farmers preferred sun-warmed onions for chewing, leaves them in the sun for an hour after harvest. Ptahhotep says, plucking a bulb that's been resting in the dirt, its skin slightly wilted. The heat brings out the sulfur, makes them extra spicy, burns the bad bugs right out. Modern studies would later confirm that heat does enhance allium's antibacterial properties, but in 1200 BCE, it's just common sense. If it burns your eyes, it'll burn the rot. By evening, your hands are sticky with onion juice, your clothes reeking of the bulb's sharp tang, and your teeth miraculously feel cleaner. When Ptahhotep calls it a day, the laborers gather by the canal to rinse their faces, each pulling a final onion from their tool belts. Best part of the day, mutters a man named Khanum, cracking open a red onion with his thumbs. Washes away the dirt, the bread grit and whatever demons hid in my mouth while I work. He demonstrates the farmer's rinse. Chew the onion for a full minute, focusing on the back molars, then swish water from the canal. Yes, the same water they irrigate with. Risky, but they've built up immunity before spitting into the dirt. See, he says, showing off a mouthful of surprisingly white teeth. No fancy pastes, no prayers to Sekhmet. Just bite, chew, spit. Even the gods can't argue with that. 学术界还在争议的表述. Did this raw onion habit prevent decay, or just mask symptoms? Historians debate. Skeptics point out that many farmers still lost teeth to wear and tear, but advocates argue that without onions, the situation would have been far worse. Think of it as ancient flossing, Tehotep says, shrugging. Not perfect, but better than nothing, and cheaper than a trip to the dentist, assuming you can afford the onions in the first place. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet, the laborers sit in the cool dirt, sharing a simple dinner of fish and flatbread. No one bothers with plates. They tear the bread with their hands, wrap it around onion slices, and eat greedily, the sharp flavor cutting through the fish's earthy taste. After the meal, without a word, everyone reaches for another onion. Small, fiery red ones. The kind that make your eyes water, but your gums tingle. You follow suit, biting into a bulb that's been sun-warmed and slightly sweetened by the day's heat. The first crunch is sharp, almost painful, but as you chew, the sulfurous oil spread across your tongue, numbing the faint ache in your molar. You swish canal water as Khnum showed you, spitting out a mix of onion bits and breadcrumbs, and marvel at how something so simple, so mundane, can feel like a miracle in a world without options. Tehotep notices your surprise and chuckles. Nobles have their gold and their myrrh, he says, but we have the Nile, the sun, and onions that grow like weeds. Nature doesn't care if you're rich or poor. It gives what you need, as long as you're smart enough to use it. He taps his temple, then his teeth, a grin splitting his weathered face. As the first stars appear, the laborers begin to drift home, clutching leftover onions for the morning's chores. You walk beside Pohotep, the scent of the day's work. Sweat, dirt, onions, mingling with the cool evening breeze. He's right, you realize, in the fields. Tooth care isn't about rituals or luxury. It's about survival, about using the tools the Nile provides to keep going. One day, one onion, one bite at a time. Tomorrow, we'll venture into the realm of the dead, exploring how onions followed Egyptians into the afterlife, mummified with the deceased, painted on tomb walls, even placed in tooth sockets to preserve smiles for eternity. You'll see how a vegetable meant for the living became a symbol of eternal oral health, and why archaeologists still argue over its exact role in the grave. But for now, let the day's exhaustion settle, along with the comforting burn of raw onions still on your tongue. Drift off to the sound of crickets chirping in the onion fields, the distant hum of the Nile, and the knowledge that even in the hardest lives, nature provided a way to smile sharp, pungent, and unapologetically alive. Sleep well, and dream of farmers everywhere, clutching their onions like treasures, knowing that in their hands, they hold both a meal and a legacy of dental resilience. The torch in your hand sputters, casting flickering shadows over the jagged stone steps, leading down into the tomb. It's midnight, the only light coming from the moon peeking through the entrance above, and the weak flame clutched in your sweating palm. You're in the Saqqara necropolis, hovering over a 4,000-year-old burial shaft, about to do something no modern archaeologist would approve of: disturb the dead in search of dental secrets. Hey, when in ancient Egypt, right? The air inside the tomb is cool, musty, laced with the faint, improbable scent of, wait, is that onion? Impossible, you think, until you spot a dried, papery onion skin curled in a corner, its layers still faintly pungent after millennia. They really took this whole onions forever thing seriously, you mutter, stepping over a crumbling relief of a scribe offering a bundle of bulbs to Osiris. Egyptians believed the afterlife required a body intact, including teeth, to speak to the gods and enjoy eternal feasts. So mummification wasn't just about preserving flesh, it was about preserving smiles. Archaeologists have found mummies with onions stuffed in empty tooth sockets, linen-wrapped bulbs placed near jaws, and even onion residue on dental tools buried with the deceased. A 2018 study of a 19th dynasty noble's mummy revealed traces of allicin, the antibacterial compound in onions, in his gum tissue, suggesting post-mortem dental care was a thing. You kneel beside a sarcophagus, its lid carved with a man's face, teeth prominently displayed in a serene smile, prying it open, gently, out of respect. You find the mummy wrapped in linen, hands crossed over a small wooden box. Inside the box, 3 perfectly preserved onions, their papery skins still intact, nestled beside a stone mortar etched with tooth symbols. For the journey, you whisper, imagining this ancient man worrying about toothaches in the afterlife. Here's a detail that'll make you side-eye the afterlife prep. Some tombs contain tooth amulets, shaped like onions, carved from carnelian or faience. These were placed directly on the mouth, or in the coffin, believed to ward off decay demons in the underworld. One tomb in Thebes even has a mural showing a mummy's soul, a bird-like bar, holding an onion over its mouth, as if preparing for a celestial dental exam. Talk about planning ahead. Your torchlight falls on the mummy's face, and you notice something odd. Between the teeth, tiny bits of dried plant matter cling to the enamel. Carefully, you extract a fragment. It crumbles into a powdery, sulfur-smelling dust. Onion. Definitely. Historians think Egyptians might have packed onion paste into cavities before mummification, both as a preservative and a final act of dental care. Better to arrive in the field of reeds with clean teeth than risk Anubis judging your oral hygiene. You muse, half laughing at the absurdity. But did these tomb onions serve a practical purpose, or a symbolic one? Some scholars argue they were purely religious, a nod to the onion's association with eternal life. Those circular layers, remember. Others point to the antibacterial properties, suggesting Egyptians used them to prevent post-mortem decay in the mouth, a crucial step, since a rotting jaw could damage the cow's ability to speak. According to ancient texts, the mummy in front of you, with its onion-stuffed box and dental amulets, seems to bridge both worlds, practical care and spiritual insurance. You move to another chamber, where wall paintings depict the deceased's funeral banquet. In one scene, servants carry platters of onions alongside bread and beer, while a priest blesses the food with a ritual rinse, using, you guessed it, an onion-dipped one. The caption, in faded hieroglyphs, reads, "Offerings for strong teeth in the land of forever." It's a reminder that here, tooth care wasn't just a mortal concern, it was a lifelong commitment that extended into eternity. In a corner you find a small wooden coffin, meant for a child, its lid painted with a cherubic face, sporting a perfect set of teeth. Inside, the tiny mummy holds a single green onion shoot, still faintly green after millennia, a final gift from parents who hoped their child's smile would stay intact in the afterlife. The sight tugs at your heart, even in grief. The belief in onions' protective power endured. As your torch begins to dim, you take one last look at the sarcophagi, the amulets, the painted onions. Every layer of this tomb, every artifact, whispers of a culture that refused to let teeth, symbol of life, speech, even identity, fade with the body. Onions, in their humble, pungent glory, became both bridge and guardian, linking the living and the dead through a shared desire to smile, always defiantly, into eternity. Tomorrow, we'll return to the present, carrying with us the echoes of ancient chews and tomb-bound onions, to see what their dental wisdom can teach modern mouths. You'll compare onion paste to electric toothbrushes, raw chews to mouthwashes, and wonder if maybe, in their blend of nature and spirit, the Egyptians had a point about protection being as much about belief as biology. But for now, let the tomb's silence wrap around you, broken only by the distant drip of groundwater and the faint eternal scent of a vegetable that outlasted stone, sand, and time itself. Drift off imagining those mummies, smiling softly in their linen wrappings, clutching onions like talismans, confident that even in death, their teeth would hold fast, guarded by a bulb that knew no end. Sleep well, and dream of a world where the line between life, death, and dental care was as thin and circular as an onion's skin. The first thing you notice when you blink back to the present is the hum of your air conditioner, a far cry from the Nile's gentle murmur. Sunlight spills through your bedroom window, landing on a tube of mint-flavored toothpaste, sitting on your nightstand, its label promising triple protection in shiny letters. You touch your teeth, half expecting the grit of ancient bread or the burn of raw onion, but they're smooth, familiar, modern, and yet somewhere in the back of your mind, that faint sulfurous tang lingers, like a ghost of 4,000 years of smiles. Let's take a step back. Modern dentistry has come a long way since Hotep's onion fields. Fluoride, electric toothbrushes, even laser treatments for cavities. We've swapped honey and onion paste for synthetic detergents and triclosan, and turned oral hygiene into a $30 billion industry. But here's the kicker. Those ancient Egyptians were onto something. Studies show that onions do kill oral bacteria. Honey is a natural antimicrobial, and even their gritty eggshell paste had the right idea about abrasiveness. They were pioneers in blending nature and necessity. Long before holistic dentistry became a hashtag, you wander into your kitchen, where a single onion sits on the counter, unassuming. You peel off a layer, hesitate, then take a bite. The sharpness hits your tongue, making you tear up. No sacred rituals, no gold tools, just a raw bulb in a modern kitchen. Your gums tingle, and you laugh at the absurdity. Here you are, in 2500 BCE farmer's post-lunch routine. Maybe Hotep was right all along. Sometimes the best tools are the ones that grow in your backyard. Here's a fun modern twist. Some holistic dentists still recommend chewing raw onions for a quick bacteria blast, though they'll probably tell you to rinse with water afterward. Unlike Kahneman his canal swishes, and get this, scientists have isolated allicin, the compound that gives onions their bite, and are studying it as a natural alternative to chemical mouthwashes. Ancient Egyptians didn't have lab coats, but they had millennia of trial and error, and that's worth something even if their breath could clear a room. But let's address the elephant in the dental chair. Were their methods perfect?
Absolutely not.
Sand-laden bread wore down enamel, abscesses were common, and let's not forget the whole praying to Sekhmet while someone yanks your tooth with copper forceps thing. Modern hygiene is safer, more effective, and blessedly pain-free, most of the time. But there's a beauty in their approach, a seamless blend of health, culture, and nature that modernity has neatly packaged into tubes and bottles, often losing the story along the way. Archaeologists and dentists still debate the true impact of onion-based care. Did it delay decay, or just make people feel better? Was the spiritual aspect crucial to compliance, or just decoration? Some say we underestimate the power of ritual. How believing in a remedy can make it more effective, even if the science is incomplete. Others argue it's time to let ancient onions rest in peace, preferring the certainty of FDA-approved fluoride. You look at your bathroom mirror, at the array of dental products lining the shelf, whitening strips, floss picks, mouthwash that promises to kill 99% of germs. It's a far cry from Nefertiti's mortar and pestle, from Imhotep's chants, from the farmer's sun-warmed onions. Yet, in a strange way, they're all part of the same journey. Humans, across time, trying to keep their teeth strong enough to eat, speak and smile. That's the real takeaway, isn't it? Tooth care isn't just about hygiene. It's about care for your body, your community, even your legacy. The Egyptians didn't just use onions because they worked. They wove them into stories, rituals and tombs, turning a vegetable into a symbol of resilience. Today we have fancy tools and scientific studies, but the core desire remains to keep our smiles intact, to pass down habits of care, to believe that a little effort now can ward off pain later. You rinse your mouth, the onion's bite fading, and glance at the clock. It's late, but not too late to appreciate the bridge between then and now. Those ancient Egyptians, with their pungent breath and sacred pastes, taught us that health and nature are inseparable, that even the humblest resources can become pillars of resilience. And maybe, just maybe, they'd chuckle at our fancy toothbrushes while secretly admiring the minty flavor. As you climb into bed, the room dimmed by city lights, instead of desert stars, you think of Tahotep's onion field, Nefertari's golden mortar, the mummy with onions in his coffin. They're all gone, but their wisdom lingers in the science of Elysin, in the comfort of a home remedy, in the understanding that across millennia, we've always sought to protect what lets us connect our voices, our smiles, our shared humanity. Now, turn off the light, let the day's thoughts fade, and carry with you the gentle reminder that whether you're chewing a raw onion in 500 BCE, or swiping a fluoride-laden brush in 2025, you're part of a long, ongoing conversation with time, one that starts and ends with the simple, universal desire to smile, strong and sure, for as long as you can, sleep well, and dream of a world where every bite, every ritual, every tiny act of care is a thread in the fabric of human resilience, soft, pungent, and infinitely connected. Now that we've journeyed together from the sun-baked fields of Memphis to the quiet solitude of a modern bedroom, let the rhythm of this story ease into something softer, slower, like the gentle lapping of Nile waters at dawn. Imagine the onion scent fading into a distant memory, replaced by the calm hum of your fan, the coolness of your pillow. In this twilight between wakefulness and sleep, picture ancient hands planting onions by starlight, their movements deliberate, almost meditative. See the flicker of a reed lamp in Nefertiti's kitchen, the gold mortar in Nefertiti's pavilion, catching the last rays of the sun, the silent promise of a mummy's onion amulet. These moments, once vibrant with life, now rest in the quiet of history, but they linger in the way you brush your teeth tonight, a silent nod to generations who turned necessity into ritual. Let your breath slow, each inhale a whisper of ancient wisdom, each exhale a release of the day's tension. The Egyptians believed in cycles of the Nile, of the sun, of life and death, and in that spirit, know that every act of care, ancient or modern, is part of a circle that connects us all. So drift deeper, wrapped in the knowledge that you've traveled through time, not just to learn about onions and teeth, but to remember that every story, every smile, every gentle act of self-care is a thread in the fabric of humanity. Sleep now, safe in the quiet certainty that the past is never truly gone. It's woven into the present, as soft and enduring as the memory of a far-off onion field under a sky